You wouldn't want to be spreading misinformation.
UMNO need to have its dominance in this form of identity.
If the people at the top don't clean up their act, it's obviously going to translate to all these disruptions.
So this is basically a manpower problem, not the license problem.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Headlines. They go to space for the top stories that made the headlines and more. My name is Amalina Kamal.
And I'm Hazwin Hassan. As the dust settles from the recent UMNO General Assembly, one of the most pressing questions on the minds of political observers and the Malay community is, how does UMNO regain the trust it once held among the Malays?
Indeed so, and that is why we'll go into the factors driving this decline, the strategic recalibrations necessary for UMNO's resurgence, and the broader implications for the Malay electorate. From leadership dynamics to the challenges of youth engagement and socio-economic issues, we'll explore what lies ahead for UMNO and whether it can rise to meet the expectations of the community it aims to represent. For this, political analyst Dr. Nirwandy Noordin will join us in shedding some of his expert takes. So please do stay tuned.
And in the same episode, we will also turn our focus to a matter of critical importance for both the aviation industry and the flying public: flight safety at Malaysia Airlines. Recently, the Civil Aviation Authority of Malaysia identified several technical issues that led to the National Carrier's Air Operator Certificate validity being reduced from 3 years to just 1. We'll explore the ripple effects of this decision, from the day-to-day operational challenges for pilots to the broader implications for flight safety. Malaysian Pilots Association President Captain Abdul Manan Mansor will join us to share his takes on this.
Yes, but first, let's talk about, post UMNO General Assembly. Now, in the face of declining influence and a shifting political landscape, the party is at a critical crossroads. Now, Dr. Nirwandy, thank you so much for joining us on Beyond the Headlines. I will start with the first question. What specific strategies do you think UMNO should adopt to address the evolving preferences of Malay voters that we see today?
For us to understand that every voting pattern in the country of every election have a very significant shift has been resulted of the previous election. So this also goes into the last election, when the 15th general election also have witnessed several forms of significant shift, particularly on the Malay voters. So this brings into a good context of discussion, the core discussion, what will be the next patterns of the Malay voters in the coming general election. But it's important for party like UMNO to focus into what will be the Malay preferences of voting element in the context of voting patterns in the Malay community. As addressed by UMNO in the past, it's important for UMNO to look into the reconsiderations of UMNO strategy, what will be the next UMNO shiftings in formulating the best approach for the Malay voters, because it is quite significant, because every significant changing in the form of voting patterns of in any election, whether it's a PRK, whether it's a general election, it could have some significant value that we have to learn about the election. And the politicians and the party have to look deeply what are the costs of the elements in the compositions of the voting patterns, particularly on the Malay voters in the context of UMNO or other relevant Malay party in the country. Because when it's not been known, where it's quite unknown, the interpretations of the voting pattern, the interpretations of what the Malay want in the context of giving their votes to any potential leader, contesting in the next general elections or the coming small election, PRK, is also very important for them to be understood. What is the really core values that can project the preferences of the Malay dominance in the context of the Malaysian elections? Because the Malay dominance is still important in the structures of the voting patterns in the country, because it ensures that the Malay are among the party, the voters that will significantly shift the results of the election. So it's also important to look into this core Malay dominance elements in the voting patterns and the voting elements in the country. So the preferable element that we need to understand is that to make sure that the Malay context of the voting pattern is being understood, studied, and to be known what are the elements that cause Malay to go and cast their vote to any party such as UMNO.
And Doctor, what specific steps should UMNO take to reconnect with Malay voters and ensure its core values resonate with the current generation? This especially in the face of modern information warfare and short voter memories.
It's also important for UMNO to address the real cause of the problem of why the Malay voters distanced themselves with UMNO in the last elections and what makes that happen. So this is important for UMNO to look into this shift. And this major shift is of course related to the information warfare, the current propaganda elements, the AI, the platform that you use. We're not trying to promote TikTok here because TikTok has been said as one of the main reasons that caused a significant shift in putting up what are to be learned about politics and what are the main reason of people voting in the last elections. And of course, in several elections, it shows that TikTok is quite significant. But we TikTok be relevant in the election, that is a matter of platform. But the root cause of the issues is to look into the constructs of what is the UMNO core values. What will be the determinations of the UMNO to show to the people, to the current reality, that UMNO is progressing as a Malay dominant party without neglecting the core value or the core understandings of other races and religion in the country, as guided and as the pillars of our federal constitutions and the Rukun Negara or the national objective. So this might be a challenge for UMNO to really look into that particular matters, because it's important to understand that election is all about numbers. But when we talk about numbers, numbers is a value that people giving to a certain party, such as UMNO, when they realize that UMNO basically doing much for the Malay voters. UMNO basically championing the issues of the Malay element. So these schematic restorations in the politics, what we call as a way how people will vote, is because of the short attention of the memory of what people have witnessed of any party have done towards them. And this retention of short memory, of course, related to longer term of memory, the schema of the long-term memory of the significant value, historical remarks, historical achievements, what UMNO have been doing, what other party have been doing for the last few elections. Before the establishment, in fact, UMNO is the party that helped to gain the independence in the country. But is that still relevant?
Doctor, how can UMNO effectively use positive reinforcement here to, continue its legacy and connect with voters better? What we want to do right now, what we want to see UMNO push for is the historical, significance the party carries, especially today where a lot of young ones don't necessarily understand or remember.
Party, you have to have a good strategic information campaign to link the historical element that have been one of the main core of you championing the votings or the voting patterns of the voters before, and how you put into the current construct. So this requires some tactical moves, some tactical propaganda elements, and of course the best propaganda is the truth. But somehow or other it lost around the line that people, when we talk about propaganda, people always associating propaganda with something negative, some character assassination campaign, some kind of disvaluation of some integrity of the moral value of some current leadership, but that is not supposed to meant by the propaganda. So this come into the core positiveness element that UMNO have to bring back the legacy of the UMNO as a party that bring the leaderships, that promotes independence, that are championing independence, and of course gain independence for the country as one of the main core components that help to establish independent country, but how it does bring that critical value of historical constructs, the schematic retention and memory, and hybrid it put in a projection. So UMNO are doing now and currently are doing, and future as a future leader, as a future party that will keep looking into the Malay dominance association of related issues. So this is quite important because the focusing of the strategic element, the core component had to be into some certain construct. Of course, it look into some critical element. The first, of course, is the racial issues. The second talks about the region issue, Islam. Then it talk about the economic issue. Then it talk about political, economic, and socio-economic valuation and all other important constructs. So UMNO need to have this constructive element link back to historical value, and this constructive element have to be put into very positive propaganda, achievement value, marching value of showing that UMNO is basically moving forward. And way of doing it is of course by using some symbol, by using some narrative, some constructive idea and provocative element to show that UMNO really moving forward, and hybriding, linking it back into the historical conduct that UMNO are championing the issue since the independent day, and one of the party that of course involved in gaining independence for the country.
Now, how can UMNO balance its role as a Malay dominant party with the need to integrate and harmonize with other racial-based parties in Malaysia's political landscape?
When we talk about the alliances, when we talk about racial politics, we have to acknowledge that this is part of the continuations of the Malaysian polity structure or Malaysian political structure, because the integrations of the dominance by racial-based party is still relevant in the country. If we have party like MCA, we have party like MIC, we have party like PAS, we have party like DAP, we have party like UMNO, in fact, we have party like Bersatu, of course, PKR is basically more multiracial party. So when the racial integrations of party, racial-based political party is still relevant in the country. So it might be, you need that equilibrium element. So what is the equilibrium point here? We're talking about alliances. So this is where the core factor value, how BN has been championing the issue of integration, leading by UMNO as the core Malay dominance party, leading the MIC-MCA to form the alliance of Barisan Nasional. So now we have Kerajaan Perpaduan, ada Datuk Sri Ibrahim BMX, which are doing quite well, where the PKR, basically with UMNO, are also looking into the integrations of party base with DAP and some other party in the form of that big coalition. So it shows that the racial integration of parties is still relevant. So we cannot put apart of this Malay dominance party and other racial-based dominant party, because somehow or other, this is part of the equilibrium point that we still have the country. But the big issues here, how UMNO can project itself to manage and to assure the people, to ensure that this coalition, the alliances form with any alliances for now is with the PKR, with the Kerajaan Perpaduan, DAP, or it might be any form of alliances in the future. But in the constructs of that alliance as a whole, in our general elections party, we want to make sure that these coalitions fully restore the pillars of the Rukun Negara and the Federal Constitution. So this gives a significant element to show whether the UMNO have that capability to integrate this dominance of racial integration, to harmonize this racial integration, and to be the leading base party, or be a subset of any form of coalitions in the future. But the base of UMNO core supporters, of course, is the Malay dominance voters that have been one of the main core element of the voting patterns or the voting structures in our country. So this cannot be neglected, and UMNO have to look forward in looking into whether they can still be relevant in championing the issues or becomes the major of the alliances or the subsets of any form of alliances, but they need to focus into their core issue with gaining the trust of this Malay vote.
Okay, Doctor, how can UMNO effectively preserve its distinct identity and core values while at the same time participate in coalitions with other political parties?
Of course, when UMNO form a new coalition or any form of coalition, UMNO need to have its dominance in this form of identity, because every party have its constructive dominance identity. Every party such as UMNO, PAS, PKR, DAP, and what we call the big giant party of Malaysia. They are not too much of big giant party in Malaysia. We have party like UMNO, we have party like PAS for the Malay dominance voter, we have party like PKR for the much more multiracial integration party, we have party of MCA and the DAP for the Chinese-based party. Of course, we have MCA for the Indian MIC for the Indian-based party. So this is what we call the element where UMNO put integration. It must not lose its identity. It must show that it have significantly increased or retains its identity when it form any form of coalition. For example, in PKR and DAP in Kerajaan Perpaduan. Because this, we retain the UMNO identity to champion the issue, to bring forward the issue, to increase, to innovate the socio-economic interests of the whole country population, particularly the interests of the Malay dominance voters, conclusively in the issues of the Malay and Islam as the federal regions of our country. So this gives into a big important question mark. What are the capability of UMNO to retain its identity? What are the information warfare campaigns? What are the propaganda? What are the positive elements that UMNO need to look into the constructing blocks of symbolism to project its image? Concurrently going through any forms of alliances, for example, in current Kerajaan Perpaduan alliances, we're doing well with the Noordin concept, but how the UMNO still does not lose its identity? Because this identical element is one of the important factors that have to be acknowledged by all the party in Malaysia. Because if you lost this block, if you lost these reputations, if you lost this remark by looking into form of your base core supporting parties, and of course, if you off the trajectory in the context of the Rukun Negara and the Federal Constitution, because I repeatedly mentioned this is a must, because any party have to show that they are significantly intended or in the constructive line of our federation and the Rukun Negara. Of course, we talk about national security element, we talk about the most important threat that we have, the subversive radicalism that we're going on in all the countries. So it might be happening in our country. So what will be UMNO putting up all the constructs, maintaining the alliances with all the party, putting up all the good components of its socio-economic innovation, but it has not lost its identity.
And how would you suggest that UMNO effectively engage with young voters, for instance, while ensuring that the party's core values and the principles of national security and stability are not compromised?
So UMNO have really to look into whether the public, particularly the youth, are looking them as a new form of constructive, innovative party, or whether it's just a form of conservative party that's losing its momentum. So the result only, of course, gives some supporting element that shows that UMNO might have some trajectory against the normal, what we call the young voters, to put it back into the normalizations of getting the young voters to support them. But it requires much more than that. Because for the youth, normally they will look and go into the concept of very kind of the shortcut terms politics. They look into some form of symbolism. They are in the moods of the entertainment politics. Who can entertain them in the form of politics? We're bringing the values to the, not neglecting that they say the views is very naive in politics. That shouldn't be the right word to interpret the voters of the youth. But what they want is how politics is being entertained towards them. What are the elements of the message to be brought by new values of the politics, and it have to be done with the current values of their belief. In fact, the modern values of the youth also have to be guided by the federal constitution and the negara, because it fall back in looking into the values wrongly by what we have the base identity of the country. It also will translate into the new projections of voting pattern. Let's say the youth does not acknowledge and looking into the federal constitution and the negara at a set of identity values that's not so strong for us to be drawn up, such as what we have Pancasila in Indonesia, for example. So this value, eventually, we want them to make the country to move progressively from the construct of their own interpretations and values. So this is important for all the politicians, including UMNO. They have to make sure that the youth believe in them, and they also need to make sure that the youth identical value is currently according to national security pillars, federal constitution, rukun negara, and this is quite a hard work to be done by all the politicians and the party, because when they try to please the youth much, so this also might be one of the results or the element that youth does not understand politics. Because for youth, the politics might be just for the process of how they can gain interest. But politics is much more than that. Politics is about national stability, national security, national interest, and of course, in putting up to hold up the values of our principle of the rukun negara and the federal constitutions.
Doctor, when we consider the passage of time here, what sort of strategies can UMNO seriously look into to modernize its political campaigns, to appeal to the younger audience here, particularly in the context of emerging technologies and shifting voter experiences?
So what you need to move is to bring the new dimensions of the politics. Negeri could be a boost for UMNO to move into progressive, positive propaganda of politics, in championing the issue, listing out what they can do, what are their public figure, what are their political figure, what are their associations with the current leader, the academicians, the people around them, to bring up the value of UMNO, to shift the current political campaign, political dimensions. When we talk about campaign elections, when we talk about by-election, when we talk about general election, they have to move into a new dimension of concept. Of course, it happens everywhere, but the strategizing of the conceptual of the political propaganda have to move into one new direction. So if UMNO could develop and find this formula, particularly on the Malay dominance voting patterns, and not sticking it up into the rule of the long, outstanding, obsolete information warfare campaign, that is still relevant, but they need to form a new elements, a new analytical elements. For example, the last election, we talked about the TikTok. Although there are some negative radical elements that happens in TikTok campaigns of politics, but that does not bring any form of discontinuations of people's support to any voting patterns for the political party that managed to utilize TikTok very well. So UMNO have to be ready towards this. So what's next? In the context of the incoming generation, we talk about generative AI, we talk about the positive politics, we talk about the core elements, micro elements of people wanting to look into that. The potholes have been covered up. They want to talk about people have enough money to buy things. They talk about integrations of conceptual dimensions of what security is all about. So this is all elements that have to be discovered towards the next generation. But what is much important is for the UMNO to formulate these elements of positiveness by boosting up the negeri by-election, by using negeri as a form of boosting element for them to come up with new patterns of political achievement, new patterns of political aspirations for the youth particularly, because we are yet looking to the tsunami of the youth in the last elections, and probably by the next election, it might be a form of tsunami by the youth. So this is important for UMNO to project themselves as that kind of people can put their hope in the party with the new elements of political campaign, propaganda, positiveness in the next coming election.
Now, on commitment, how can UMNO effectively demonstrate its commitment to regaining the trust of Malay voters beyond just issuing an apology?
Direct apology is, of course, something that you can do, but when you show that you are capable of doing something, people automatically restore the confidence in you. So the new leader, any appointing leader, the current leader of UMNO, any political party in Malaysia have to make that value of apologetics seems very visible. It's a very tangible element, because apologetic can be very intelligible if it does not bring with any form of significant physical achievement only thing that people can measure about. Of course, qualitatively, people can see that something been achieved by philosophical element, and it's of course conceptual and philosophical element is a part of the politics. But looking at it in terms of result, in terms of appearance, in terms of significant event, in terms of media representations, in terms of highlighting several incident issues that really can portray themselves as championing the Malay voters' dominant issue. So UMNO really have to build up this constructive value to show that they really meant when they mean that they have to apologize to the Malay voters. By being apologetic, have to be shown in the context of the propaganda campaign, information campaign, strategic campaigns of looking that they look apologetic, but they are not weak, but they're trying to move forward and they're trying to bring into significant value achievement of politics. And this goes to all abroad of the cross political party in Malaysia, because people really are not that kind of conservative patterns of politics. People know what politics is meant. People know what is the direction of politics of any other country. People know what is the interest that they want. And because people are very demanding, people are very individualistic, but people also sometimes lost hope into the political elements in the Malaysia campaign, when it seems that politics basically are not moving to any progressive dimensions in terms of restoration of public confidence. So this is the element that UMNO really have to address by being apologetic and showing to the voters, party, the Malay dominant voters, that they are really men, why they mean that they are moving up to some certain extent new dimensions of their political achievement.
Doctor, when we talk about the Nenggiri by-election, of course, UMNO won that particular election. And a lot of people said that, it's not necessarily a predictable win. But fortunately, the party managed to garner the attention of the voters there. And a lot of people have said that, the younger generation have also been inclined towards UMNO's leadership. Now, do you think the factor of them winning was, attributed to Muhyiddin's drama on the calls for Muhyiddin to step down? Do you agree with this sentiment?
I think there are some certain political culture in some other country that you cannot dismiss happen in some certain regional elements. What happened in US might not be the same as what happened in our country. What happened in India must not be the same as our country. In fact, what happened in ASEAN country, what happened in Thailand, for example, what happens in Myanmar, what happens in Indonesia might not be similarly the same, but the concept of politics remains. What is the concept of politics? The people trust. People distrust in the politics. So because we are trapped in these parliamentary democratic systems of what we call a good element that we have to restore. So the politician need to restore the confidence of the public. So the culture values of the politics have to be looked into some specializing element that we have in the country. So it have to be, when in election, the voting power of the power of people is there. But when the vote has been casted, when the result has been announced, when the executive and the prime minister have been appointed, so there's not much the public can do about it. So this is where the politics need to restore the confidence by putting up the people interest first. Of course, this is quite rhetorical again, but what people really want is to show that what the current example of the prime minister, for example, MX doing, is basically to show the progressive micro elements to the people, and of course, is getting some people confidence in the longer term and the short term value. So this is directive what is supposedly to do by any form of leader. So they need to make sure that they show that they are really capable, and of course, because people can cast their vote in election, and after that, people will fall back and leave it into the system of democratic monarchy system that we have in the country to restore the stability of the country.
Now, thank you, Dr. Nirwandy, for your insights so far. Hopefully, we can see you on set in real time next time. Anyway, now moving on to our second topic of interest, MAS. It has been getting a lot of attention, not just in news reports, but also on the online sphere, hasn't it, Hazwin?
Yes, it has, Amalina. And unfortunately, it was all for the wrong reasons. So let's start with what happened yesterday. So Minister Anthony Locke, the Transport Minister, he called for a special press conference to convey what the National Civil Aviation Authority regulator, or CAM, had based on its findings from its audit of MAB, Malaysia Airlines Berhad, and the group, Malaysia Aviation Group. And the first thing that came up was that the Malaysia Airlines Air Operator Certificate, or its license basically, AOC for short, was shortened. The validity period of that license has been shortened from 3 years, typically, down to just 1 year. So essentially moving on, what that means is that they're going to have to renew their license every year now, annually, rather than having it valid for a three-year period. So that's one. And the other thing was that it was revealed, again, based on the findings from the audit by CAAM, was the recent flight disruptions that I think it was last weekend that, Malaysia Airlines announced they had to cut down the number of flights for 13 international routes, essentially making flights less frequent. The big reason for this was that the national carrier has actually been hit by staff resignations, primarily from the engineering department. So if they don't have enough people to ensure that the aircraft is actually safe for flight. So that's why they've had to cut these flights. And which has led to all of these problems. Yeah,
I mean, certainly the pressure on masks is not necessarily just something that can just be brushed off overnight, right? It's very immense here, and then what it signals here, I feel, is not just operational and technical concern, but it's about compliance as well, because you're talking about safety of passengers. I mean, of course, the crew members are important, but your MAS is a national carrier, and you're talking about having your service be accessible to the public at large.
Exactly. And Anthony Locke, he did not mince his words when he made it very clear, basically, that we can't take any chances when it comes to safety. And, he said, well, in particular, Malaysia Airlines has been instructed to make sure that they comply with the highest safety standards, in terms of their fleet of aircraft and so on. What this also translates to is that, yes, if it means having to shorten the validity of their license, their air operator license, down to 1 year, also having to cancel flights and causing the disruptions, then so be it, rather than taking any chance, any risk on any safety precautions, safety measures, when you don't have enough staff, even the technical staff, to actually do the work.
I suppose we're talking about not just operational, again, issues, but in terms of morality and morale itself. How can a national carrier be at this stage? Who's actually running it, right? And when you talk about the engineers the shortages on engineers here, that's actually very concerning, and I'm certain it's very concerning for MAS pilots as well, for MAS pilots themselves. And with that, we actually have Malaysian Pilots Association President Captain Abdul Manan Mansor to share with us what he makes of the whole situation.
If you reduce the flight schedule, if you don't get your manpower down there to make sure that your aircraft is visible, you have the same problem, isn't it? Yeah, say you reduce your schedule from 10 to 5 to make sure. But then again, if your manpower is not trained or they are missing, they're not competent to manage or to serve aircraft, you feel the same problem. The airline services, the airline function, they depend a lot of outsourcing, right from the service in the third country, the ground service, until even your meals, your culinary and all that, it's all outsourced. So if your supply chain is screwed up, if your stakeholder supply chain is screwed up, you're not going to run a good show. You're not going to run a good show. So if they get difficulty in getting the spare parts and all that, how is the ground crew going to maintain the aircraft? So this is basically a manpower problem, not the license problem. It's a manpower problem. While the news have been saying that people are leaving, so why do they allow these people to leave in the first place? Where is the HRM, Where is the big boss? Where is the leader of the organization to stop this, people leaving the company? So it's the overall restructuring of the organization. If there's no leadership, there's no visionary people down there to stop all the leaking. MAS is going to be continuously having problem. You cannot have an HR which is firefighting. You only fight the fire when the fire has arisen. You got to be more proactive. This is where your forward-sightedness. This is where you got to be your strategic thinking must be coming. You got to focus your people and all that. And in the moment there's a shortage of people, you got to get the people as quickly as possible. You have to do a roadshow. You have to do a roadshow. You have to attract people from whatever the country they have gone to. Get them back. In order for MAS to survive and recover and turn around, you need a new set of people. Yeah, a new set of people who are competitive, who are competent, at the same time who's got a vision to be successful.
All right, we've heard what Captain Manan had to say. Hazwin, maybe to kind of like give this particular segment a wrap up a little bit, what do you think would be the next course of action for MAS here?
I mean, clearly, based on what the captain had to say, it's a leadership issue at this point. Of course, you can go further down the ranks, but if the people at the top, don't clean up their act, it's obviously going to translate to all these disruption in the services that they offer. For me, the engineering staff who left, en masse, 63 of them all at once, that's just a symptom of the problem. And this is essentially, what's going to happen when you have a major, a problem at the top, where I think what's happening really is a major restructuring of the company. Essentially, this is inevitable. You're going to get people leaving, people being retrenched. It's probably part, I'm not an expert, but it's probably part because if it's a restructuring exercise, then it's going to be part of a downsizing exercise as well for MAS, or Malaysia Airlines rather, now that it's known as that. But moving forwards, the people at the top, the CEO, the stakeholders at the top, they're going to have to really address this issue.
Right.
Yeah.
For me in particular, I kind of highlighted or at least commended Captain's take, especially when it comes to the HR's responsibility here in terms of staff retention as well as recruitment, right? Because you know for a fact that you have a massive resignation, right? But what are you doing, right? What's the department doing? How are we looking into getting or attracting more talents to come towards MAS here? Yeah. But I suppose this is a discussion for another day. Let's move on to our third and final topic of interest that has, gripped the nation. It started since last week about the sinkhole that happened in Kuala Lumpur. And recently there was another sinkhole that made waves in the same location, right, Hazwin? What's the update to that, at least? Especially when it comes to search and recovery.
Right. So in the early hours of Wednesday morning on the 28th of August, another sinkhole appeared just 50 meters away, and rightly so, as you pointed out, Amalina, very close to the first one that swallowed the unfortunate Indian tourist who was, who happened to be walking on the pedestrian path at the time. So this second sinkhole is just 50 meters away from the first one that emerged last Friday. And where it is actually is just right opposite the Masjid India police post. This is a small police station, a police post. And obviously, that has gotten a lot of attention. I mean, it should. You've got, the DBKL and other agencies scrambling to have to inspect that one as the search for the first victim from the first sinkhole is still ongoing. You've had, in fact, after the second sinkhole emerged, you've had the IGP, the Inspector General of Police, Tan Sri Razaruddin Hussein. He actually went to see it. He went on the day itself. He went to visit the second sinkhole there. DBKL, through the mayor, they've pledged to make sure that the situation there on Jalan Masjid India is closely monitored. In a statement, the mayor said that it has enlisted and is working closely and enlisted the help of Indah Water Consortium, IWK, and other agencies to ensure follow-up measures are taken to prevent any future incidents. She says that the safety and well-being of Kuala Lumpur residents remain their utmost concern.
Yeah. And although there's no casualties reported when the second sinkhole happened, but authorities have pledged to, conduct an audit because, the incidents were just too close to each other, and even the location was just too close to each other. I know for a fact that, like, on social media, there's a lot of all these conspiracy theories being thrown around, how, you know, there's a big, massive like cave system underneath the city. But, you know, as a concerned public or as a concerned citizen, what we want to at least highlight across to our audience is that to deter away from, you know, sharing information that is not necessarily true. I think recently there was like a particular professor who claimed to be from if I'm not mistaken, right? Shared like, I mean, apparently a post went online circulating, and this person was posing as a doctor with a public institution, and then that particular public institution came out to say, no, this person is not with us. This is what I think what we want to highlight across to our audience. If you do not know, you know, the source of the information or even verify that information to be true, do not share it across, because you wouldn't want to be spreading misinformation, especially during this trying time. What we want to highlight across to our audience is to just keep your prayers with you, so that our search and rescue team are able to recover the unfortunate victim that fell into the sinkhole last week.
Just something to add, actually. I think this is quite crucial information. And I know, you know, there's always that tendency to go overboard with the criticism against, you know, authorities and for how they're handling things. I mean, that's just how it goes usually anyway. But you know, I would say kudos to the authorities for handling it the way that they've handled it so far, because obviously, you know, something like this, while I would for now reserve any further criticism of, you know, how well prepared they were, or whether they hadn't seen this coming, because, you know, this sinkhole was a disaster waiting to happen, because it happened. The first one actually happened in the same spot that happened, I think, a couple of years ago. I might be wrong on that, but you know, I'll put that aside for now. But what they're doing instead now, they're still, you know, the ongoing search is still ongoing. That's good. Number two, they deployed a team from the nuclear agency with a ground penetrating radar to help with the search, on top of sending divers down the sewage system. I mean, it goes all the way down. The first sinkhole is actually 8 meters deep. Ground penetrating radar, team from the nuclear agency has been sent down, and the geology department has also been sent down to obviously inspect, you know, the terrain, the surface, the rocks, you know, all the stuff that make up the foundation above, beneath the roads that we have today.
So I just want to add a little bit about the audit that I mentioned. So it's actually known as the integrity audit, and what it means is that it will include the IWK, which is a National Sewerage Company Indah Water Consortium, in terms of checking its particular system, how they've been managing it so far, how can this happen. This, of course, was told to reporters by Datuk Seri Fadilah Yusof, our DPM, when he visited the site on Wednesday. The incident has actually been garnering a lot of media attention, not just locally but also abroad.
Yeah.
So a lot of what our officials are doing, or at least authorities or those involved in terms of in this SAR are doing, they are being eyeballed in a way. So every move counts, right? Every decision matters here.
And you see, that's where we come in, because we hold the people in charge to account.
Yes.
So that's what we're here for.
Anyway, unfortunately, this is the end of the episode. Of course, if you like this particular episode, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Don't forget to also turn on the notification bell if you haven't already. You'll not only get Beyond the Headlines update, but other reports on NSC Online will be delivered to you. Follow us on X, Instagram, as well as Threads and Facebook. My name is Amalina Kamal.
And I'm Hazwin Hassan.
And we'll see you next week.